All right. Well, good morning. Good to see so many faces here on a Thursday, like in the middle of May. So I started hearing it called May-cember because it seems like everybody's got just as much to go on this month as December. So um, we're going to start off with prayer, and Representative Rice is offered to do that. What's your mic number? 24. Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for each person here. I pray that you would bless our work and just give us clarity on the best direction to go in each of these areas. And pray your blessings on this meeting in your name. Amen.
All right. And thank you. So welcome to our first meeting outside of session. This is exciting. This is what I call the single most unglamorous to name committee, I think, in the General Assembly. That probably touches some of the most important things that influence the quality of life of everyday Georgians, every Georgian for that matter. So I'm excited to get this moving. We have a lot of overlap with, we've touched power. We talk about water, which we'll get into a little bit more in a couple minutes, but we have committees that deal with the day to day. This is not what the purpose of this committee. The purpose of this committee is what does the next 20 years look like? This is a forward-looking committee. And, I think I always look back history. I'm kind of a little bit of a history person, specifically when I'm trying to do something new. I look at what's been done in the past. And about 20 years ago, we really entered in some I want to give Chairman Lynn Smith, who's not here today, I want to give her credit. She worked really hard on a lot of the water issues, and she looked at what was coming. And I think you kind of hit these points in history where if these groups of leaders, if they're willing to take a forward-looking approach, they can really set the next generation up for success. And that's what I'm excited for. That's what this committee is about. And I appreciate the speaker having the faith in me to run this committee. So with that, first thing we do is try and break it into solvable pieces. So we're going to break the committee. There's going to be two subcommittees. One of the subcommittee is going to be a very water-focused subcommittee. The other subcommittee is going to be more of an energy-focused subcommittee. We're not going to really delve into the energy part right now. We're going to focus solely on the water piece of this, and we're going to go throughout the state, which is the way it should be done. So I'm going to go ahead and let everyone know that Chaz Cannon will be the chairman for the subcommittee for water, and Chairman Victor Anderson will be the chair for energy. So those are the two subcommittees, and I'll be working with both. Representative Rice, you'll be ex officio on both committees. So as you know, since you're our secretary, everyone else, all the other members of the committee, if you have a particular topic that you would like to delve into more, whether it be the water side or the energy side, just let me know, and we'll get subcommittee assignments out here in the next couple of days. With that, we're going to discuss a little bit of the future meeting dates that we have right now, and these are tentative, but I'd say they're pretty close to what we're going to be looking at. These are water-focused only meetings. The first one is going to be on 6/4, June 4th. It will be down in coastal Georgia. We have location TBD, which is going to be the case for all of these, but they will be in that general area. We will be discussing manufacturing will be a focus of that particular meeting, along with, and I hate to do this to Lee when he's not here, but we'll probably take a look at mining. I consider that to be under that umbrella as well. The second meeting we're going to have on the water side of it will be on 7/17 in Fayetteville. And we're still working with GMA to kind of get that locked down. But right now we're looking to do that in Fayetteville. We will be focused on data centers and local impact for data centers, and obviously water usage as well. And then final, we will actually, I'm going to kick this in. We will kick off the power subcommittee. We'll do a Zoom. Victor, Chairman Anderson will get that meeting out, but I just figured we can just do a Zoom to kind of get things moving on that one. And then on 8/27, we will be having our final water meeting, which will be ag. It'd be more of an ag focus, and also power generation, because people don't realize that when we generate power, actually there is some water consumption that is associated with that. And I believe we're going to try and do that in Moultrie, Mr. Chairman. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So that's all the meetings, the future meeting dates I have on the agenda for the moment. I also wanted to go in, and I did notice that we have a kind of big piece of news that George Powers, I guess Governor Kemp's office has made an announcement that we'll be doing some rate freezes for the next 3 years. And I just anecdotally want to thank the leadership over the PSC and to do that. I think Georgians need that relief, and I'm excited to see that they came to that yesterday. So we had a couple speakers. Most of you, I don't know if you remember or not, but we had really exciting meetings about, well, I guess the first one was a joint meeting with the EUT, where we had several power presenters, and then we had some meetings with EPD as well. But unfortunately, during my data center meeting that we had, that got cut short, and I had committed that I would allow both Environment Georgia and Science for Georgia to speak at that meeting, and they didn't have that opportunity. So I did want to give them the opportunity to go out and speak to the full committee, just to be fair, because that's what I committed to do. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Jeanette and Environment Georgia.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This is Representative Stinson. I'm on.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members. Happy to be here at the end of the school year. My name is Jeanette Gare. I'm the Director of Environment Georgia. We're a nonprofit that works on air, water, and green space issues. We have sister organizations all over the country. So in a couple states that are dealing with a lot of data center issues right now as well, Environment Virginia, Environment Texas, Environment Florida. So I've been talking with my counterparts in those places. We have a long history of working on energy issues, so I've helped to run solarized campaigns, which makes it cheaper and easier for people to put solar on their roofs in about 2/3 of the state. We also have a long history in resource management, so help with the Jekyll Island Master Plan, did a lot of work with the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship legislation that passed a couple of years ago. Thank you to the legislature for that. And then this summer, I spent a lot of time testing waters all over the state for microplastics. So would welcome y'all if you want to come tromp around some rivers with me. Let me know. Okay, we can skip, I guess, the next 2 slides. When I was thinking back in February about how to make this presentation, do I need a clicker? Oh, I need to be over there. I'm sorry. I really wanted to sit. I decided, so we work on air and water and green space issues. And so decided to divide my presentation up basically along those lines. So I'm going to talk about water. I'm going to talk about air issues. I'm going to talk about green space issues. I think water, I'm really glad that there are going to be some follow-up meetings on water because this is certainly one of the biggest impacts that data centers bring to our state. Next slide. Data centers use a lot of water. Just doing a kind of survey of the proposals and existing centers in the state right now. Average is about 9 million gallons of water per day. To put that in context, that's about 1/3 of the water that Coweta County pulls from the Chattahoochee River. And a lot of that is consumptive use. So it doesn't go back into the river. 6 million gallons consumed. Next slide. This is one of the folks I hope you all talked to is Chris Manganello with the Chattahoochee River Keeper. He hat tip to Chris for doing a lot of work pulling data on how much water are data centers using in the state. One of the challenges that I would flag for this committee is it's actually not a really easy question to answer. There's not a really clear place that this is being tracked, at least when we were asking at EPD. But we've tried to pull as much data as we can from existing permits, from newspapers that are talking about proposed data centers. And next slide. This is the number that we came up with for current, existing, and proposed data centers. So again, I will say that this, again, not a clear, really easy way to pull this number. So this is our best guess. 68.5 million gallons of water every single day being pulled from Georgia's rivers and not returned from proposed and built data centers. Put that into context. Next slide. This is what some smaller, medium-sized cities around Georgia pull. So again, we're comparing 68 million gallons per day to Warner Robins, 10.8 million gallons per day. So this is a lot of water that is coming from our rivers. And in the case of a lot of these cities, remember that they are pulling water, treating it, and then putting it back in the rivers. That's not always the case with data centers. So this is a lot of water. Next slide. Hat tip to Chairman Thomas for pointing out that energy also uses a lot of water. This is from a Berkeley National Lab report. They put out a report every single year that looks at the energy use of data centers. This is from their 2024 report. They also point out that generating energy requires a lot of water. So if you're getting your energy from a nuclear power plant, from a gas power plant, from a coal power plant, you're also using water to cool that power plant. Georgia, the red places on this map are places that use a lot of water to generate electricity. So if we're pulling electricity off the grid in Georgia, we are using a lot of water. So we are not only pulling water to cool data centers, we're also pulling water to supply electricity for those data centers. Next slide. What happens when we have another drought? Chairman Thomas was talking about 20 years ago, we did a lot of planning that might have been talking about a lot of the planning that we did around the 2008 drought, which is right around when I actually started working with Environment Georgia in the state. We did do a lot of planning. And one of the things that we really looked at is when we are in a really critical drought, who turns off their tap? Who stops pulling water out of our rivers? What do people do with their lawns, et cetera? I think we need to have that conversation about data centers. And confession, I did not update this map for today. This is a map from when we were going to present back in March. So I think we are in less of a drought than we were when I pulled this map. Next slide. So that's water. Moving on to air quality, data centers. Next slide. This is most of Georgia's air quality problems come from transportation, so tailpipes, and then power generation facilities. So if we are generating more power, we are leaving coal plants running longer than we anticipated. We are building more gas power plants. We are generating more air pollution in the state. I just found this slide fascinating. It looks at what percentage of these states' electricity is going to power data centers. And you can see Virginia way there up at the top. Almost a quarter of Virginia's electricity goes to power data centers. Georgia is a little further down the list. I think we are closer to 4%, but in the top 10. This is a great slide. So so excited also that you will be digging in on electricity. This is a slide I got from our friends at the Southern Environmental Law Center that I'd certainly urge you to circle back with on the electricity question. But data centers are driving a unprecedented increase in electricity demand in the state. So the bottom red bar is the peak energy that we use in Georgia. I think this is from like a cold morning in 2024. The top red bar is what Georgia Power is proposing we build, additional electricity that we need in Georgia, primarily because of new data centers coming to the state. So we're talking about a 50% increase. If we build gas power, keep coal power plants running longer, that's an impact on air quality. Next slide. And Georgia does have some pretty significant pockets of air pollution problems. So 7.6 million people suffered through almost 2 months of elevated air pollution days in this report that we issued back in 2022. And that's kind of all over the state. It's not just in Metro Atlanta. So Augusta has some serious air quality problems. Outside of Chattanooga has some serious air quality problems. Valdosta has had some problems. So this is not just a Metro Atlanta problem. This is all over the state. I'll also add that one of the things that data centers do is they install diesel generators to provide backup power if the grid ever goes down. Those diesel generators are incredibly dirty and would cause some serious air quality problems if they were running, any extended amount of time. So when the power goes out, just imagine in Augusta, if you had a data center that was running for weeks on end, diesel generators, not only is there a noise issue for neighbors, but a serious air quality issue for the community. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. So last issue, getting into data centers and green spaces. How much land are data centers taking up in our state? This is, again, based on current existing data centers and the planned announced data centers, 85 million square feet, about 1,500 football fields. Chairman Dickey, I looked up, that's about a fifth of our Valdosta onion crop in Georgia. I was trying to find a good apples to apples comparison, but a significant amount of land being taken up by data centers, which is certainly consideration. Next slide. So these are some of the questions that I have and would hope that the committee wrestles with. Serious issues for water. What does this mean for downstream users? What does it mean for upstream users? What does this mean when we have a drought? Which I think is a when, not if. Those generators, those diesel generators, how is that impacting air quality? What does that mean for the neighbors of these data centers? I hope one of your meetings invites folks who are neighbors to existing data centers to really talk about their experiences, because I think there are some concerns that I hope the committee will hear. Transmission lines for these data centers. All of these data centers are going to need transmission lines. What does that mean for eminent domain, for the people that live around those data centers? How are we limiting erosion? That's, millions of square feet that we are building around the states. What does that mean for the dirt that's ending up in our rivers and on downstream properties? And what can we do and recommend to the communities that are dealing with these data centers? How can we make sure that they are, finding good neighbors and finding ways to exist with data centers in the long term? I think that's all I have. Next slide. Yep. There's my contact information. So happy to answer questions or happy to stay up here and or move back and answer questions with Amy.
Well, thank you. I will open the floor up if anybody has any questions. You have one? All right. Chairman Dickey.
Well, thank you for this presentation. Very well done. You covered all the bases, something I worry about a lot. I've got a controversy in, it's not my district anymore, but very close down in Monroe County with the siting of a data center and all these things. you raise or being raised in the community too. And I also want to say something to the committee as well as you. We have a state water planning councils that I'm a member of Middle Okmulgee, that I've been on since the inception. I think it's probably close to 20 years ago. So EPD and these water planning councils are doing a very, very detailed job of water consumption, what's flowing into the basins, what's flowing out, whether it's industrial. We're doing an excellent job with agricultural water metering. We know what we're using there. And so I hope you'll engage with these water planning councils. I hope our committee does, because they have a very they have not really been visible a whole lot in the last few years, these water councils, but initially we really relied on them to get a handle on our water consumption and usage in these different water basins. So I think that's a real key for the water part going forward. And they're tracking how much is available, how much future growth we have, and all those type of things. So I hope we'll hear from that water planning council in the future, Mr. Chairman, too. So thank you for this presentation.
A great suggestion.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
So our next speaker, Science for Georgia, Amy Sharma.
Morning, y'all. All right. Good morning. Thanks y'all for having me here. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about data centers. I'm Amy Sharma. I'm the Executive Director of Science for Georgia. Our main purpose at Science for Georgia is to get science out of the lab and onto the street. And so one of those things that we do is gather relevant, concise, and actionable information that can help y'all make decisions for the state of Georgia. Next slide, please. A little bit about me. I'm here to provide some background on some data centers. Side note, back in the day, in ancient history, as my children would say, I was a chip designer for IBM. I ran some big data verticals for GTRI, and I also worked on multiple data analytics software products. So about this one subject, this is a little personal to me, and I'm doing more than just playing a doctor on TV. Next slide, please. I'm really excited that y'all are talking about this. We are seeing an explosion in growth in data centers in the state. And we're thinking about this very new way of doing business in kind of an old way of how we used to incentivize businesses to come to this state. I am a firm believer in AI. I probably also have 35 connected devices in my house. I used AI yesterday to do a huge research project. We need data centers and we need AI. And so thinking about how we can make them be good neighbors is really a great thing that y'all are thinking about today. All right, next slide, please. Specifically, I'm going to give you all a crash course on what a data center actually is, and then break it down into three things: the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. I really want to make sure that you all have a great base so you can make some great decisions for our state in Georgia. All right, what are data centers? Next slide. They make possible great things, right? They support small businesses. The startups I work for could not have existed without having startup space. They produce research breakthroughs. They enable artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. Downside, they also enable deep fakes. And, you know, and just like any new technology, some of the people that are first to the gate on a new technology are charlatans and horrible human beings. But I think that the good is going to vastly outweigh the bad. And next slide, please. Well, next thing. So let's all, how many connected devices in a home is at least 21. So we did this to ourselves, right? And we're not going back. My kids will die without their online Nintendo, but for reals, there are plenty of things that we need that they provide. All right, next slide, please. All right, so they are nothing we have ever seen before. They are giant warehouses, huge, right? Think of all those Amazon shipping warehouses that you've seen around the state that are going up. They're bigger than that. And what's in them are millions of compute processors. And those millions of compute processors are attached to a bunch of storage devices that hold all of your data, like all of your pictures of your cat and all of the things that Google has collected about us that helps them sell us better ads. All of those things are in these data centers connected to network devices, which is why we are one of the most attractive states, because we have a great broadband system here in Georgia. And then because these things are also super hot, a bunch of cooling systems, like a ton of AC and HVAC units. All right, next slide, please. And so unlike traditional economic development, though, once you put this giant warehouse of computing machinery up, they employ less than your average McDonald's. Everyone talks about how they're supporting high-tech jobs. They could be located at the North Pole and support high-tech jobs. They do not support high-tech jobs in the cities that they sit in. And so we keep thinking about them, and I feel the same way, right? Like Hyundai came in and they're giving us 600 direct jobs, and isn't that great? And they're spending all this money, and woo, and that is actually really good because a manufacturing plant brings 600 good jobs, which brings all these schools and hospitals and Walmarts and everything else. Data centers, temporary construction jobs, and then 30 guys to make sure the lights are still on. So are we willing to incentivize them in the same way that we incentivize Hyundai plant when really we're getting a McDonald's? All right, next slide, please. All right, fast facts about Georgia. We are very attractive for data centers because we have cheap land, power, and water. We also have really good broadband. I would like to congratulate us on having such great broadband. We've done a really good job as a state in connecting everyone, but that's what makes them attractive. Also, Texas, Arizona, and California, which are the other huge compared to them, we're water rich. These data center guys think that we are water rich. These guys, their needs parallel our needs. When it's hot out, they also need more power and water, just like the rest of us. And because we are water rich, we are considered premium land, which means the premium data centers are going in here. So local Georgia businesses actually can't afford to buy the space in these data centers. All right, next slide, please. All right, next slide. All right, I am an engineer. I love engineers. I think we can solve all the world's problems. But right now, because we are just building these like hand over fist, engineers get to be lazy. There's more data centers than they need, so they don't have to try. And I mean both, like they don't have to try and compute technology, they don't have to develop new chips, they don't have to develop new cooling software, they don't have to develop ways to do anything. And so we are encouraging them to be lazy. I think that's bad. As an engineer, I think that's terrible. We should be making them try harder. And so right now, the US is approaching data centers the same way Russians fight land wars. They're just throwing bodies at the problem to just make it happen. And so because of this like overabundance of data centers and this overabundance of cheap land, power, and water, they don't have to try to do things better. Next slide, please. To add fuel to the lazy fire. I mean, just like any good capitalist, data center manufacturers are going where they can get the cheapest land, power, and water. So they go in and they suck up all the available land, power, and water, and then they move on to the next site. And so you'll see on this map here, the dark, like black spots are where they have oversaturated the market. Atlanta is now a secondary market that is fast becoming a first tier market, but they're also starting to expand out into other markets because they're starting to use up all our land, power, and water. All right, next slide. But we're planning for continuous growth. We think the party's just never going to end. And so this is Georgia Power's plan to meet the data center demand. If you'll notice, gray is their current existing capacity, which meets like our state's needs. Red is their projected demand and capacity by 2031. So they want to almost double our state's power generation in the next 6 years, just for data centers. All right, next slide, please. And I know we were talking about the rate freeze this morning, which I also 100% welcome because my power bills also suck. But we really need to think about the fact that our rates did go up a lot in the past few years. And Georgia Power has admitted that very few, if any of those $43 were for investments into data centers. And so what happens in 2028 when they've built all this new capacity and our rates are unfrozen? All right, next slide, please. All right, known unknowns. All right, keep going. All right, so Jeanette alluded to this, but you guys are in a position to find out a bunch of things. So there's no SIC code for data centers. We actually tried to call and get a SIC code and we're told there isn't one. So there's no quick and easy way to find out how many data centers there are, where they're sitting, how much power and water they're using, who their power provider is, what they're paying for their power, what tax revenue they're putting back into the cities, how many jobs they're creating, what sort of additional infrastructure demands. We just don't know any of this. And so as Jeanette alluded to, our friend Chris at Chattahoochee Riverkeeper started a list. I sent my interns on a 3-month scavenger hunt in the past few months to figure out where they were. And I mean, this is like digging deep, tax records, newspaper articles, everything else. So all the information I'm about to provide to you is our best guess. All right, next slide, please. So this is where they are. You see most of them are in the Atlanta area and they're starting to expand outward. And that is a big 74 over Atlanta. Next slide, please. All right, and so based on where they are, because we don't actually have any of the real numbers for them, we're using industry standard of 150 to 300 watts of power per square foot, and then 2 to 4 gallons of water per vet. And so thinking of it that way, next slide, please. We came up with this magical table. And so currently we think there's 97 data centers in Georgia. There's another 19 that have been announced. Fun fact, we made these slides in March or February. In the past 2 months, they've announced 10 more. That number was 9 when I originally made these slides. Based on their square footage, we're talking 14,000 megawatts of power draw. That's the equivalent to power 6.3 million homes. There are only 4.6 million housing units in Georgia. And talking about water, we're talking 27 billion gallons of water. So that'll be the equivalent of the water usage of 560,000 people. Savannah Metro has 431,000 people, and Augusta Metro has 636. So this is not chump change here. All right, next slide. And just for reference, all 4 go back. All 4 cores at Plant Vogel only produce 4,600 megawatts. So we're talking 3 total Plant Vogels for all of our data center electricity needs. All right, keep going. Also, fun fact, lost tax revenue. We give these guys a lot of tax breaks. So there was an audit in 2022 showing a negative return on tax breaks for just 24 cents to the dollar. More recent report by Good Jobs First, Georgia is one of the biggest losers in the entire United States, and we're standing to lose $300 million in tax revenue alone in 2025. Next slide, please. And it's split evenly between bulk sales tax exemptions, right? So like when they come in and they buy all that computing equipment that they should be paying sales tax on, we give them huge tax exemptions on that. And then they just also get, and there's a special high-tech data center exemption at both the local and the state level. So this is where we're losing a ton of money. And again, we're losing all this tax revenue, which is probably their only value to us because they're not giving us any jobs. All right, next slide, please. Unknown unknowns. Next slide. Is this a bubble, right? Like we're planning for growth, like it's just the party's never going to end. But honestly, some of this growth is very speculative. There's now talk of bubbles on both AI investment and data center investment. Microsoft is pulling back on projects. The new term now is everybody's taking a pause. So they're not saying they're quitting, but they're all saying, we're not sure what we're going to do. Most of these announced data center projects are in phases. So they're like, we're going to build one part now, and then one part 3 years from now, and then one part 4 years from now. I don't know about you, but companies making 5-year plans are not very reliable. All right. So what happens when they fold and we've got a bunch of vacant warehouses and a ton of new power generation? All right. Next slide, please. And Jeanette alluded to this also. What are they? Critical infrastructure? These guys say they're critical infrastructure. They sell space on their servers saying that they will provide 24/7 update time. So that way, when the power goes off, they are going to turn on all their diesel generators. But where are they in the queue? And this is a great question for this committee to ask. Where are they in the queue, right? Like my friends in Valdosta and Augusta, they didn't get their power for a whole month after Helene. My friends in Valdosta didn't even have running water for 2 weeks after Helene. Do these guys get to turn on before them so we can have like deep fake cat videos? Like where are they? They're declaring that they are mission critical infrastructure, but I think this is a job for you all to answer. All right, next slide, please. All right, that was a lot of gloom and doom, but we're going to end on a positive note because it's the summer and I'm feeling that they can be good neighbors. They 100% can be good neighbors. All right, next slide. So, oh my God, formatting. So basically, when they come in and they're like, this is super critical and there's nothing we can do, again, they're being lazy. Technologically, they can do a lot, right? DeepSeek came out, I don't know, a couple months ago, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. They can do a lot in terms of computing technology, storage devices, network devices, cooling systems, all across the board. Every component of a data center can get better. And in a weird fit of irony, using AI to control load balancing and routing and cooling and things like that will actually make them a lot more efficient. So they can actually use their technology to save themselves. Next slide, please. Things that Georgia can do and that I strongly urge you all to think about. One, transparent reporting. Like I said, all of the numbers I presented to you were my best guesses. We don't know. We don't know anything about these guys. We have zero concrete numbers about them. And so how are you guys supposed to plan for the future if you don't actually know what you got right now? And these are like easy questions that their accountants should be able to answer. How much water do you use? How much did you pay for your water? Like, I can tell you, I can like look at my Atlanta water bill and tell you how much water I used in the last year. I'm hoping they can too, right? And then when they come to Georgia, they right now are taking a lot more than they're giving. Let's make them give us stuff back. Let's have them invest in our people, right? Let's have them have battery storage for backup. That really increases the resiliency of our grid in these storms, right? Let's make them pay for that infrastructure. If we need to double our power generation facility, like capabilities for them, and it's really serving them and not us, why do we have to pay for that power generation? And let's make sure that like there's some things in there. If we give them a bunch of tax incentives and then they pack up and leave in 2 years, how do we claw that back? How do we get insurance and make them sign a 15-year contract? Like, how do we make them be responsible, good neighbors? That's up to us. And then there's super simple things like, you know, they could use gray water for cooling. If they put cisterns on their tank on the top of those giant buildings, they could really cut their water use by like 80%. This isn't hard. And then community things, right? Like there was some community, when a data center was coming in, they were like, well, we need you to help us update our curriculum in our school system, and we need you to build us a hydroponic farm. And they were like, cool. So let's encourage local city councils to ask for things that they need, right? These guys want to come in. Let's make them be good neighbors. All right. So not last slide. So like I said, you guys, I'm really excited this committee exists because you have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions and to find a lot of information and to help them, or maybe make them, because you are the legislative branch, be good neighbors. Like we're at a juncture here and we can do the right thing, or we can just continue down this path of like them taking all our resources. So that's all I got. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I would agree with you on a lot of things that you said, but I'd say specifically that this is exciting and this is something that needs to be looked at. So we'll obviously, you're more than welcome to come back as we're moving through this process. I am going to open up for a couple questions. Representative Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation today. And I understand you said several times that your numbers are pretty much guesstimates that you're trying to calculate this data. For the water usage and consumption, did you take into consideration the systems that actually have closed circuit cooling systems and they don't actually continue to use fresh water? They actually have closed systems. How much of that is calculated into your formula?
That's a great question. We had no way of knowing if they're using a closed or open, or if a closed.
Or you
loop.
went with the worst case scenario.
Well, actually, so if you saw there's the estimate of 2 gallons per watt to 4 gallons per watt. So we went with the low estimate of 2 gallons per watt, which would account for people that are using recirculation systems and stuff like that. So we actually went with the lowest estimate that we could go with, just to not be even more alarmist. Fun fact, there's no such thing as a free lunch though. So if these guys are using water recirculation systems, their power bills are higher because it is more energy intensive. But yes, water recirculation is a great solution and a great way to protect like our water resources.
And another thing I wanted you to touch on in a joking way, but you had a very good point about they could locate at the North Pole. I think part of the challenge with that, of course, would be the proximity of the locations. In that type situation, wouldn't we be dependent upon lines coming through Canada to provide the access to the data that they have stored? And how much of an advantage is it to have them in close proximity when it comes to us needing technology access for the growth that we are planning for Georgia, the companies we want to come here, the people we want to come here, and having reliable data sources?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did jokingly say the North Pole. I would say that most major companies, because there's like different data protection laws for Europe and everywhere else, will want to locate in the US, and that it would be strategic for them to be located in the US. But they do not. They could be in Kansas.
Well, I guess I'm asking more from the perspective of the user. You know, you talked about 21 items in the homes, and you had me thinking, I'm like, wow, she's right. You know, my daughter has this plugged up and that plugged up, and I'm watching streaming, Netflix and Yellowstone and everything else that I love to watch and all the other great shows. And I'm thinking, how could that be possible if I didn't have that data usage? So,
yeah,
from a user perspective,
if they're located in Kansas, you're going to see no lag. Like the speed of light is very fast, and so coming from broadband from Kansas is going to give you no noticeable lag on any of those things. So like having them located in the US isn't anywhere in the US is fine. Having them actually physically located in the North Pole would not provide any sort of user lag, but it would cause data privacy, whatever. There's like so many agreements between us and Europe and everyone else, as that it would be probably a little problematic from that way. But a user perspective, them sitting on the moon would
And one
probably
last
give you
follow-up,
nothing.
Mr. Chair. I mean, we certainly have to consider natural disasters like that's Tornado Alley
Mhm.
and the disruptions and possibilities. And the more we depend on this technology, I think we had someone challenged me to think about a GPS outage
Mhm.
and how that would impact us, the self-driving cars and things of that nature. Natural disasters happen. The further it is away from us, though, wouldn't you agree that the further it is away from Georgia, it increases the possibility of disruption in those services?
I would say no, because they're supposed to have redundancy. So if one data center gets wiped out by a hurricane, it is supposed to be redundant somewhere else. Like the reason I'm paying Google to store my stuff is because they have redundancy. And so disruptions in service would be far less than say when New Orleans gets hit by a hurricane and we don't have oil refineries.
Good. All right. Chairman Werkheiser.
Thank you, Chairman. Like my friend, Mr. Reese down there, it seemed a little bit one-sided. The slide on the 300 million, that's not a net. The reason some of these communities are open arms about them, the ad valorem bump that they're getting, is pretty significant. I mean, that's why they're welcoming them in there, and I'm not advocating for them. I'm just saying it's seemed a little unbalanced in, especially because these companies, no matter who they were, we gave them tax credits for certain things on the sales tax on computers. They would have got that anyway. That's a cost of goods. So that was not a legislative decision. They would have gotten that anyway. But the 300, again, is not a net, because the numbers that some of these, that they are giving back to communities, especially in ad valorem, is pretty staggering as well. Those are big numbers.
Right. So that Good Jobs Forced report did account for tax revenue from ad valorem. So I can go through and look through how they did their analysis, but that's just like, yes, they got some ad valorem tax, but that's also a thing that you guys don't actually know. The real answer is how much ad valorem they are paying right now, right? Like we don't know. So maybe it is a lot and maybe they're getting a lot of ad valorem, but how much did they lose on local sales tax revenue in the beginning and construction costs, right? Because we really incentivize construction as we should, because normally when you're coming in and you're constructing a business, you're then also going to have a lot of employees, and we should incentivize that. So yes, but we don't actually know. So the real answer is that's $300 million in lost tax revenue for Georgia and at the local and the state level. But I can look into how they did their math.
All right. So no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that concludes our speakers for today. So in your packets, you have something that looks like this. Y'all want to pull it out? This is a document that I compiled, and I actually wanted to talk through this document with you for a couple of minutes. And I'm not going to tell you that I did not have an AI help me pull some of this together. So I'm just going to be totally honest about that. Yeah, I'm sure there's a data center somewhere in North Pole that I use. But I felt like I wanted to do something a little different. on this committee. So this is not a verbatim document. This is a living, breathing document, meaning that it's going to get amended and changed as we go through this process. What I really wanted to do is get a basic framework together of what it is that we would be talking about specifically on the water piece. And Chairman Anderson and I will put something similar together on the power side. But I think contextually, the best thing to do is kind of look at the last 50 years, right? And part of that is water usage increases, and I don't think you can talk water in Georgia without at least delving in a little bit into the water wars that happen. We went through and broke it down, water usage by area. And I hope that since we have a pretty diverse group of people across the state, you'll spend a little bit of time to notice the differences between your area and other areas. North Georgia has different issues than South Georgia. But I think most importantly, and if you'll notice that the subcommittee that the chairman and I are pulling together, topic 5 really kind of is the meat of how this whole hearing process is going to go. So 5.1 is agricultural needs. 5.2 is urban suburban needs. 5.3 manufacturing data centers. 5.4 is and I'm sorry for those of you in the audience that don't have this document, but it's power generation, and I think it does a pretty good job of basically talking through that, and we'll continue to fill this out as we're going through the document or we're going through our hearings. Representative Reese, I'm glad you brought up the closed loop cooling system. Section 6 is a comparative analysis of data center cooling systems. 6.1 is closed loop cooling. 6.2 is evaporative cooling, and then some efficiency gains versus perceptions. That's all listed in here. We'll continue to take the testimony we get. Like I said, we'll update this document, but we'll cross-reference everything. So this is the speaker said to me, "Leave no stone unturned," and this is me turning all my stones. So a lot of times what we're going to do, again, I'm going to use my friend the AI that's going to take a lot of this testimony and we're going to compile it down and we're going to cross-reference everything. Number 7, I just thought it was important to talk about the Georgia aquifers. And 8 and 9 is both, one of them being water conservation techniques. These are some of the best practices across the United States. And some new technologies for water efficiency. That's one of if we're going to be forward looking, let's always think about what technologies are on the horizon. And maybe that's a place that we need to dig in a little bit more. And finally, some basic policy guidance that has been pulled together for y'all's review. And I put all the cited references in that as well. So you're more than welcome to go through those references if you want some exciting reading material on a wonderful Saturday afternoon. So I am not going to be the keeper of this document. This fine young lady right here will be the keeper of this document. So as we're going through, Bailey will continue to fill this out. So I hope, my goal is by the time that we're done and we're rolling later into the year, we'll have really a pretty comprehensive document that really lays it all out. So that covers all of that. And I said I would try to keep this to an hour. So it's 10:52. Chairman Parsons, welcome. We're going to be adjourning here in just a second. One other point of business, you have this sheet that has these dates. I don't know if you noticed, but when I went through these dates, they've already changed. So this was as of, it says May 22nd, but I have to tell you, it was actually as of May 21st. So please pay attention to the dates that were called out that I spoke about. If you get this sheet, this is not accurate. So you have been warned. Like I said, otherwise I'll open it for any final comments. Seeing none. Yeah. No problem. June 4th, that will be coastal. It'll be somewhere in coastal Georgia. Yes, sir. June 4th. It'll be, again, TBD location. We're going to lock that down here in the next couple days. That will be covering manufacturing and mining. The next piece of it will be 717, tentative Fayetteville. My friend in the back is shaking his head, so I think that's probably a yes. We're going to talk about, that'll be data centers. And basically, as I said, if you cross-reference this document right here, we talk about projected future water demands, 5.2 urban suburban needs, and we lumped data centers in with that. There'll be an intermediate Zoom meeting sometime between 7:17 and 8:27. That will be to kick off the power subcommittee. And again, not all of you will be on both of the committees. So 8:27, we'll be doing ag and power generation, and that'll be down in Moultrie. And those are the dates that I have currently. And we will firm them up and send something out to the committee. So yeah, we'll get all that out. Yeah. All right. Any further questions? See,
Chairman, I just want to say, looking at this document, I think you set a great foundation for us to tackle this issue. I like the way it's broken down. I think it's going to help us look at the needs of resources, especially in our state, as we plan for the future, for the growth of Georgia. We know that more people are moving in. We know that more businesses are attracted to our state, and we have to take that into consideration with everything that we're looking at. And so I think this does it well in a regional perspective, and thank you for your leadership on this.
Yeah, and thank you. What my expectation is as we continue through this process, you'll see a similar document pretty much at every meeting or the subcommittee meeting, and you'll just kind of notice that it'll continue to change. I put this as preliminary, so we'll rev it up as we're moving along. Okay. All right. And with that, seeing no other further action, we're adjourned.